Bill Downing was no ordinary outlaw. He was one of Arizona's most notorious figures during the Wild West era, a man whose name sparked both fear and fascination. His story is tangled with saloons, desert towns, and the restless spirit of a frontier that refused to be tamed. Was he a ruthless criminal or just another victim of the lawless times? In this video, we'll uncover the truth behind the legend of Bill Downing. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below with which Old West character you'd like us to explore next. Who was Bill Downing, also known as William F. Downing, if not one of Arizona's most talked about outlaws of the Wild West era? He left Texas with a Texas Rangers posse on his trail, slipping into Arizona to start anew, at least on paper. Once in Arizona, contemporary reports linked his name to the death of William S. Slim Trainer. Investigators also associated him with a string of train robberies, including a notable break-in at the Cochise Depot. His reputation didn't help him inside the outfit either. By most accounts, even his own partners had little patience for him. Early years. William F. Downing was a native of Texas. By the time he arrived in the Arizona Territory, he was already known to have troubles with the law, and reports suggest a posse of Texas Rangers had been following his trail. Many accounts claim that his true identity was Frank Jackson, a teenager once associated with the Sam Bass Gang. Jackson had been present during the 1878 confrontation at Round Rock, Texas, where the Rangers clashed with the Bass Gang. Though wounded in the leg during the incident, he managed to survive. After the death of Sam Bass, Jackson is said to have slipped away, making his way through New Mexico before eventually reaching Arizona. It was there that he adopted the name William F. Downing. Once settled, he sent for his wife, Linda, who was also from Texas. Downing never spoke publicly about his earlier ties to the Bass Gang, keeping that part of his past carefully hidden. The couple chose to live near Pierce, a small mining town in the Sulphur Springs Valley. Downing found work as a cowhand on local ranches, including the Esperanza Ranch, an establishment noted for employing men with checkered pasts, ranging from rustlers to outcasts. Though Downing built a reputation as a quarrelsome figure, many observed a change in his demeanor when he was drinking whiskey, during which he seemed less argumentative and more subdued. The killing of William S. Slim Trainer. William F. Downing and his wife eventually settled in the town of Wilcox. Much of his time there was spent in saloons, where he often mingled with members of an outlaw band led by Bert Alvord. Alvord held a curious position in town life. He was the constable of Wilcox when not working as a ranch hand, blurring the line between lawman and lawbreaker. Among the people in Wilcox, there was one individual Downing particularly disliked: William S. Slim Trainer. Also known as Bill Trainer, he came from Tennessee and had lived a varied life. At different times, he had been linked to outlaw activity, worked as a mine guard, and even served with Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. By the late 1890s, Trainer was employed by cattle inspector Edwin Russell Hooker to help oversee the ranching interests of his father, Henry Hooker, one of the most prominent cattlemen in Arizona. Trainer's personal life was also on steady ground, as he was engaged to Mila Allaire, a young woman from a respected Wilcox ranching family. Tensions between Trainer and Downing grew when Trainer began to suspect Downing of rebranding cattle. He voiced his suspicions openly, labeling Downing a rustler and making it known that he was keeping watch for him. On the evening of May 19, 1899, Trainer entered Tom Fulgham's Elite Saloon at the corner of Maley and Haskell Streets, accompanied by his friend Henry C. Taylor, an off-duty bartender. Accounts differ on what happened next. Some witnesses claimed Downing arrived after Trainer, while others insisted that he had already been inside the saloon before Trainer walked in. According to eyewitnesses, when Downing entered the saloon, Trainer appeared to move his hand as though reaching for his weapon. Moments later, several shots were fired, and Trainer collapsed on the saloon floor. Downing was quickly taken into custody. At his trial, he offered his own account. He explained that he had accepted Henry Taylor's offer of a cigar when Trainer suddenly turned toward him in a way that suggested he might be drawing a gun. Downing stated that, because of previous threats, he had been keeping a close watch on Trainer. Believing the situation to be one of imminent danger, he drew his pistol, moved Thomas Burt's aside to avoid harming him, and opened fire. Downing admitted he could not recall the exact number of shots he had discharged. Constable Burt Alvord testified during the proceedings. He explained that after the incident, he removed a pistol and gun belt from Trainor's body. The weapon, he said, was still in its holster and contained 5 live cartridges with 1 empty chamber. Alvord also noted that no one examined Downing's revolver after the event. Medical examination showed that Trainor had received 3 wounds, one that passed through his chest and shoulder, and 2 that affected his head. Based on this testimony, the coroner's jury determined that Downing had acted in self-defense and that his actions were legally justified. The Southern Pacific Kokosei Depot robbery. Constable Burt Alvord gained his position in Wilcox largely because of his reputation as a tough character from his time in Tombstone. The town believed his experience made him capable of handling the unruly cowboys who often passed through. Once in office, Alvord appointed Bill Downing and Billy Stiles as his deputies. This arrangement gave them an air of authority and respectability, which in turn allowed them to continue questionable activities without immediately drawing suspicion from local citizens. Soon, a group began to form around them that came to be known as the Alvord Stiles Gang. The members included area cowboys such as Matt Burtz, the Owen brothers, and Jack Dunlap. Together, they began planning larger schemes, including an attempt to intercept the Southern Pacific's westbound number 10 train at Cochise Station near Cochise Junction. To prepare for this plan, Downing first broke into the Soto Brothers mercantile store in Wilcox, where dynamite was taken. Later, the group also entered a mining camp in Dos Cabezas, securing not only more dynamite, but also blasting caps and fuses needed for their design. The date chosen for the train holdup was September 9, 1899. Bill Downing was tasked with looking after the horses, while Billy Stiles and Matt Burtz were given the job of stopping the Southern Pacific train at Cochise Station. During the event, the crew of the train, including the engineer, fireman, mail clerk, and an express messenger for Wells Fargo, were confronted. The safe in the express car was forced open with explosives, and the gang secured between $2,000 and $3,000 in cash and jewelry. News of the incident quickly reached Wilcox. Constable Burt Alvord, outwardly fulfilling his duty, organized a posse to pursue the culprits. However, he deliberately directed the search parties in every direction except the one that mattered. Meanwhile, Downing, Stiles, and Burtz quietly hid the stolen valuables in Alvord's own chicken house in Wilcox. Then, to avoid suspicion, they rode along with the posse in the search. As expected, nothing was found. Later, the hidden goods were removed from the chicken house and taken to Downing's ranch near Pierce for safekeeping. Of the group, only Matt Burtz chose to take his portion of the loot, after which he left Arizona and traveled north to Oregon. The failed Fairbank train robbery. On February 15, 1900, the Alvord Stiles gang attempted their second large-scale train robbery, this time at Fairbank, Arizona. Their target was the northbound number 1 train of the New Mexico and Arizona line, running from Nogales to Benson. The men who took part in this effort were Jesse, Three-Finger Jack Dunlap, Tom Bravo Juan Yoas, Robert Brown, and brothers George and Louis Owings. Unknown to them, the train was carrying Wells Fargo Express messenger Jeff Milton, a seasoned lawman and former Texas Ranger. Milton's long experience in law enforcement proved decisive. Despite being seriously injured during the confrontation, he managed to prevent the gang from gaining access to the express car's funds. With their plan disrupted, the gang withdrew, leaving Dunlap behind at the scene. A posse from Tombstone soon arrived and discovered Dunlap. Realizing the seriousness of his situation, he chose to cooperate and revealed the names of those who had organized the attempt. His testimony implicated Burt Alvord, Billy Stiles, and Bill Downing as the key planners. Dunlap passed away not long after, but not before leaving behind crucial information that exposed the leadership behind the failed Fairbank train robbery. Bill Downing, along with several associates, was arrested and taken to the Tombstone jail after being linked to the earlier Southern Pacific train holdup at Cochise Depot. In the Arizona Territory at that time, train robbery was considered a capital crime, carrying the most serious of penalties. His trial was scheduled for December 10, 1900, in the Tombstone Courthouse under the case officially titled Territory of Arizona versus W.F. Downing, number 745A. Earlier that same year, on April 7th, Billy Stiles went to Tombstone and entered the jailhouse. There he wounded Deputy Marshal George Bravin and released several gang members who were being held. Downing, however, remained in custody. When the trial began, some former members of the Alvord gang gave testimony against Downing. Both Billy Stiles and Matt Burtz appeared as witnesses for the prosecution. Still, the jury was divided on the issue of punishment. Jury foreman L.A. Smith explained before Judge George Russell Davis that although the jurors agreed Downing had been involved in the train robbery, most did not believe the death penalty was appropriate in a case where no lives had been lost. As a result, they refused to issue a conviction on that charge. Downing was acquitted of train robbery, but was not free of consequences. He was instead convicted on the federal charge of interfering with the United States mail. For this, he received a 10-year sentence to be served at the Yuma Territorial Prison. Yuma Territorial Prison. The Yuma Territorial Prison was first constructed in 1875, with much of the labor carried out by the prisoners themselves. It opened during the years when Arizona was still a U.S. territory. Life inside was known to be demanding, with some inmates required to sleep in narrow steel bunks. When Bill Downing was committed there, he was registered like any other inmate and assigned the number 1733. On April 11, 1901, he officially entered the prison through the Sally Port, the controlled entryway that all new prisoners pass through. While serving time, Downing's leg began to swell and show signs of infection. This problem traced back to an old injury he had sustained years earlier during his time with the Sam Bass gang in Texas. The prison physician, Dr. James A. Ketcherside, examined the wound and recommended amputation, but Downing refused the procedure. During his incarceration, Mrs. Downing faced hardships of her own. She was described as an attractive woman but suffered from poor health. Hoping to support her husband, she sold their property in Wilcox and used the proceeds in attempts to secure his release. As her circumstances worsened, she sought employment and eventually worked in the homes of local Tucson residents, including A.F. Franklin and later community leader John Ivankovich. On April 17, 1902, she began working in the Ivankovich household as a domestic servant. Tragically, the following day she passed away in the servants' quarters. A coroner's jury concluded that her death was the result of heart failure linked to anxiety and strain over her husband's imprisonment. She was laid to rest in the Old City Cemetery in Wilcox, also known as the Wilcox Pioneer Cemetery. Downing, meanwhile, served 7 years at Yuma. His conduct earned him respect from the prison staff, and Warden Thomas H. Rinning later described him as a model prisoner. Eventually, his sentence was shortened for good behavior, and he regained his freedom. Downing's last stand. After completing his sentence, Bill Downing returned to Wilcox and sought to reestablish himself. He opened a business called the Free and Easy Saloon, located at the corner of Maley Street. The name itself suggested a place of relaxation, but in reality, the saloon soon gained a reputation for testing the boundaries of the law. At that time, Wilcox had ordinances that prohibited gambling, prostitution, and the serving of alcohol to women. These rules were part of a broader attempt by small frontier towns to maintain a degree of order and respectability, especially as they tried to attract families and permanent settlers. Downing, however, was known for ignoring regulations that stood in the way of profit. He employed women who not only provided companionship, but were also rumored to be skilled pickpockets, further contributing to the saloon's questionable reputation. It was not long before local authorities intervened. Constable Bud Snow and Arizona Ranger William Billy Speed arrested Downing for violating the ordinance against serving alcohol to women. The connection between Downing and Speed went back further. Speed had once been a juror in the 1899 trial that acquitted Downing of responsibility in the death of William Slim Trainer. Despite this prior legal connection, the two men had since grown into adversaries, with their mutual hostility becoming well known in the community. Downing pleaded guilty to the charge and paid a $50 fine, which was a considerable sum at the time. Yet this did not slow him down. The very next day, he found himself under arrest again, this time for an altercation with a barber. He admitted fault once more and paid another fine, though only $10. To townspeople, these repeated incidents painted a picture of a man who had no respect for either law or community standards. As frustrations grew, the citizens of Wilcox took matters into their own hands by drafting a petition. The document was sent to Harry C. Wheeler, captain of the Arizona Rangers, requesting official action against what they described as an unruly saloon keeper who often caused disturbances. Wheeler, receiving reports that Downing had allegedly threatened officers who interfered with his business, considered the matter serious. It was said that Wheeler instructed his Rangers not to hesitate in dealing with Downing should he continue to resist authority. Meanwhile, tensions in Downing's personal life also escalated. He had disputes with Cuco Leal, a woman living in his saloon, and went to Constable Snow to file a complaint, asking that she be removed from his establishment. During the same conversation, Downing is reported to have made strong statements against Ranger Speed, declaring that he would not tolerate the Ranger entering his saloon. These words only deepened the sense that his feud with Speed was reaching a dangerous level. By this point, Downing's story had shifted from that of a former outlaw trying to restart his life into one of a man locked in conflict with both local authorities and community expectations. His actions, paired with his reputation for defiance, positioned him as a figure constantly at odds with the law and those enforcing it. The day after his quarrel with Cuco Leal, a customer at the Free and Easy Saloon claimed that some of his money had gone missing. Bill Downing quickly assumed that Leal was responsible and confronted her harshly. Frightened, she fled into the Ranchman's Corral Saloon, owned by George McKittrick, a competitor of Downing. McKittrick took Leal in and advised her to stay away from Downing's establishment. Sensing an opportunity to weaken a rival, McKittrick reported the matter to Justice Page. Acting on this complaint, Page issued a warrant for Downing's arrest and turned it over to Constable Bud Snow. Snow then approached Arizona Ranger William "Billy" Speed, asking him to assist in serving the warrant. Speed agreed, suggesting they wait until the following morning to carry it out. This decision proved pivotal, as it set the stage for Downing's final confrontation. The next morning, Downing was in his saloon, drinking whiskey and contemplating his dispute with Leal. He decided he would appear before Justice Page to explain the situation. Intending to go unarmed, he left his revolver inside the saloon before stepping toward the door. At that moment, he noticed Constable Snow approaching. Startled, he retreated back inside, unaware that Ranger Speed was also present. As the two lawmen advanced, Snow instructed Speed to cover the rear exit of the saloon located by the alley. Speed, carrying his Winchester rifle, moved into position. Believing the constable would enter from the front, Downing chose the back door as his escape route. Instead, he came face-to-face with Speed. Accounts state that Speed ordered him to surrender. Downing, perhaps out of habit, made a movement as though reaching for his gun, forgetting he had left it behind inside the saloon. Interpreting the gesture as resistance, Speed fired. Downing was struck and died almost instantly. The reaction in Wilcox was telling. Arizona Ranger Captain Harry Wheeler later observed that he had never before witnessed a case where a man's death was met with universal approval. According to Wheeler, Downing's passing was greeted with relief and even open satisfaction among townspeople, a reflection of how deeply unpopular he had become. Downing was buried in an unmarked grave at the Old City Cemetery in Wilcox, also known as the Wilcox Pioneer Cemetery. The coroner's jury later concluded that Ranger Speed had acted within his duties as an officer and cleared him of any wrongdoing. Bill Downing's story is one of contradictions. A man who walked the line between law and lawlessness, between respectability and ruin. His life in Arizona's Wild West shows just how blurred those lines could be in a time when survival often depended on daring choices and defiance of authority. His downfall reminds us that even the boldest outlaws could not escape the long reach of justice or the judgment of the communities they lived in. Downing's legacy endures not as a hero, but as a cautionary tale from a restless and untamed frontier. What do you think? Was Bill Downing one of the most notorious outlaws of the Wild West, or simply a man trapped by his own choices? Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories from the Old West.